Welcome to Philly Coco Presents Side Project Spotlight, episode 53. It's a developer's journey in making cool stuff. I'm Kotaro.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Aaron.
And we are Philly Coco, a Philadelphia-based Coco Heads community focused on Apple development. That primarily, but not exclusively, means iOS, Mac, tvOS, watchOS, and visionOS development. Philly 2 is to take you higher on your own developer journey. Oh, I loved it at the end.
You're coming in remote today from your usual location, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm with my family, so I'm kind of like all frazzled, more frazzled than usual.
I'm just bringing it up so that the audience understands why your audio might be not quite as crisp.
Yes. I'm on my AirPods, so if it comes off sounding a little bit like far back, or where that's the reason.
Yeah, I rarely actually hear what it sounds like to be on the other end of AirPods. They sound pretty good, but yeah.
Yeah. So what do we have today for our wonderful audience?
What do we have? We have news and some AI workflow talk, and then hopefully a deep dive into metal shaders for UI inspiration from Kotaro.
It'll be like the last. What was the title of the last? The
Composable Architecture Poorly Explained, which I'm proud of that title. It's one of my favorite titles now.
That really was one of the, like a bait, or was it a clickbait kind of title there? Well played.
Yeah, I liked it. I mean, it's true too. I did poorly explain it, so.
I mean, as long as I would love it so it'd be so badly explained, you would have people in the comments of whatever Apple's just like frothing at the mouth, like saying you explained it wrong.
Yeah, I know. That's why I said in the title. I'm working through the Composable Architecture tutorial right now in their documentation, like building their little toy app, which is like Ultra app. So I'm about halfway through. I'm at the part where we're doing testing. The reason I'm doing it is because while I have explored like pieces of it, this is just, and I've watched their videos where they build stuff. This is walking me through literally typing out, an app, actually building it, which sometimes is very helpful to get an intuition for something like a framework or an API, because I'm actually doing the work of making it into an actual app. Even if I am telling me to do a tutorial and just copying it, but I'm actually, but you know what I mean? It's just like when you write things down, it helps you remember. So I'm going through that, and that's pretty interesting. The next part of the tutorial I'm really interested in is going to be about navigation, because that's one of the areas I think is really super great about, or potentially great about TCA, but it's the area where there's a lot of videos on it over a pretty long stretch of time, I think, and it's like, it's kind of a lot, there's a lot in the topic, and I think it evolved, SwiftUI evolved, so I don't have a great intuition for exactly what they were doing, but it's essentially was either using enums or using the navigation stack stuff.
I guess if you were to say they always say every podcast is potentially your first podcast. For the uninitiated, TCA, aka the Composable Architecture, if you're coming up from a SwiftUI background, how does this differ from like the generic, state environment? Like what does this do that's better as an architecture than say the vanilla SwiftUI?
Well, I think the intent of TCA was it plugs holes. It's in SwiftUI, the modern approach. I guess it started before SwiftUI came out, but it works really well hand in hand with SwiftUI. And if you watch their videos on pointfree.co, they're not a sponsor or anything. I just like them. So if you watch their videos, they do talk about like what's great about SwiftUI and the observation. It was observable object originally, observation framework. Now they've been started talking about, but they identify different weak points in their view where you can get the trouble, and it's not quite so easy to test things, and you can have some dependency issues, like trying to control dependencies can be a little bit difficult. And there's like limitations like on vanilla SwiftUI environment. You can put stuff in the environment so you can access it elsewhere in the view stack, but only from a view. So it can help you if you want to have things accessible from like a model object or something somewhere outside of a view. It makes it a little harder. Like you can't pull it from the environment, quote unquote, outside of a SwiftUI view. And there's some other things. So what they do is the main thing they do is they create a systematized way of building an app. Like every screen you're building kind of the same way. You're either starting with a view, or you're starting with a reducer protocol, like an object that uses reducer, and the reducer takes in, like an action that you're going to like do, like I'm going to button or something, like, hello world button is like an action that's modeled as an enum, and it also has state in there, and then there's a runtime that exists in TCA, like the store, right?
Yeah.
And so essentially everything you do, you have a SwiftUI view, you click a button or something, which you send the message to the store, which is an action, which is defined as an enum, and then and that's in the reducer. And so the reducer takes that action and then modifies the state, and then sends out like a side effect. Usually if you're not doing anything like a network call or something, then that could just be none, and then it just ends there. But it's a way of completely controlling and identifying like all the actions you're doing on the screen, all your state, and making sure that your view is always just reflecting your state. And it also provides a clean way of controlling those sides, which is what I find to be one of the most difficult parts of SwiftUI. It's like when you need the network connect, you use some Apple API or something, and it's like, how do you get that all working? How do you architect that? And you just don't have to think, like, you just have to kind of understand the structures that they give you and the atoms that you're supposed to go through, and you can kind of work on it. It's not like it's rote, but you can design everything in a similar pattern, and that can, I think it can help you to make faster progress sometimes.
I guess it does do something, especially if you have the data store in its own little space. It's almost like an environment in that that kind of construct, and in that you can kind of isolate the business logic either within the reducers or within that data store, whether doing like network calls, for example, or something
a side effect, when the reducer sends out like a side effect, it sends back in an action. Right, and then so everything's an action that goes to the reducer. I think that's a central mechanism. But the side effects, it just allows you to like package them up and be like, here, go do my side effect, and then send me back an action when you're done as a result, and then you're back in the TCA flow again.
Okay.
So and what that means is you can do stuff like, I want to test my logic, and my logic relies on like an API call. Well, yeah. It's because you built it with the patterns and frameworks that they provide, you have like an automatic way of providing like the test version of those side effects, and a way of providing the preview version of it. It's like the whole, and that's one of the things I talked about how I have used in the past is their dependency framework a little bit, where it lets you wrap up some kind of dependency in like a struct and get like a live view, a line of it. You get a preview version, a test version. And you basically just, you create whatever you want to return to them, but based on the context you're using it in, you'll have easy access to the appropriate thing. So then you can go into write unit tests, and you can either like test every single thing in every single action, every single piece of logic, or you can switch it to be a little more lenient and just test specific things. But like you can go as far as to like guarantee that you have tested like every single state change that happens. So if you make a change and affects anything in the state, their testing framework will tell you if you missed by default. It'll tell you if you missed validating that state, like in your test, so that so you don't forget stuff. So there's like a lot of stuff like that. It's opinionated, just like SwiftUI is, in the sense that it gives you like one way of doing things. Basically, it gives you like a constrained pattern or set of patterns to apply over and over again, just like SwiftUI does. But I feel like it fits in with SwiftUI. It's not like you're replacing it. Like you should observable to do stuff, to encapsulate things, your model. You could still use Swift data. I'm not how they think about Swift data and stuff, but they have a lot of example code on their GitHub, and they've a lot of videos. Sure. And because I feel like,
do you feel like our good friend at Pro TCA?
Yeah.
Do you feel? Shout out to you, Matt. Do you feel like there is I won't say groundswell, but there is how like MVVM and to some degree Viper had its moment in the sun, and coordinator patterns, etc. TCA is one of those patterns that will become popular, particularly in sort of like a multi-team environment, whether it be enterprise or big company.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's popular now. I know that like I think the Arc browser uses it, and that's a big project. When you start to
when you say the Arc browser,
it's
what
called
is the Arc browser? The
Arc browser is made by the browser company.
Okay.
These names. It's a Chromium.
Wait, what?
It's the company is called the browser that makes it. Anyway, it's a Chromium based browser that I think we might talk about in our next segment. But I think they use TCA. I think that's how it was built. When you go into, you start investigating and looking up composable architecture, you find a lot of people excited about it. I've seen a few talks about it. I mean, it's hard to tell whether there's like a big tick, but I feel like there is a growing, I feel like there is a growing interest in it. Like there's definitely a very active GitHub, there's definitely people writing talks about it. And but it's not like SwiftUI when it came out, where every single, Philly Coca or I mean, every single like Coca heads meeting or Philly Coca or otherwise was talking about SwiftUI, but at least like on the things you can find on YouTube and stuff. But I do think it's up there. It's definitely it's consistently listed as an architecture when you look up SwiftUI architectures, and people give various accounts like model view or model view model, and then they'll always say TCA as well as it comes up most of the time. So
okay.
And I think that, and if you're in a functional programming mindset, then I think you definitely are excited about it because that's where it grew from.
I get the feeling that it's more like if that's your mental model of how, if you prefer that style of coding, this TCA is kind of totally up your alley, or at least much more up your alley than this sort of protocol based environment.
Yeah, and they don't have anything bad to say about that stuff. They do some nice videos about protocol stuff. And they talk about what's great about it, and then what's nice is they talk about what doesn't quite work. And they also do a whole series on protocol witnesses, which is a cool thing to look up. Protocol witnesses. So what I like about them, as I said before, was they have a lot of great ideas, and it seems to come from the functional programming we're familiar with. So I am just enjoying absorbing all of these ideas and concepts and techniques. Because even if you don't go full bore into using TCA for everything in your project, I think there's valuable insights that they have put out in the community. And I think they've done a really valuable service for the last several years, exploring a lot of these concepts in Swift. And I think they're very active in the Swift evolution list from them about things. And I mean, I think they've had some great ideas that I hope get adopted in the language. The main being is like enum paths, whatever they call them. The equivalent of case paths. I mean, the equivalent of now I'm making mix up my words. What is I forgot about last time. The
key paths.
Key paths, yes. They're called case paths for enums. Key paths, Aaron knows. So the equivalent of key paths for enums, which is actually really good. Good idea. We should definitely have that. And they use it to provide this like library around, among other things, I think. But the thing I did for a little bit was they had this little wrapper around some of the APIs from Apple for doing alerts and sheets and stuff. And you could use it to be like, I want to have an optional enum, and then I want to have a particular case in the enum, and it provide this really easy syntax to just declare that, when there's this enum exists and this case, it works out, then do this, and then so it gave you a way of encapsulating the state and the logic for showing like a sheet or showing an alert or something. Alerts especially because they changed the API, but allows you to do that all in a way that allows you to keep everything, having like a Boolean and something else, that kind of thing. So you look into it. I think it's called Swift. No, I forgot. It's one of the TCA things. It's Swift UI, not navigation. That was one of the other ones. I don't think it's maybe it's navigation. It's one of their Swift UI libraries. No, I think
the path.
They have a whole bunch of these little frameworks. Maybe it was navigation. Maybe that's the one. It's like a package. Yeah. Navigation's more simpler. I think this might be the one. Yeah, alerts and confirmation dialogue and stuff. So that's it. So you go to Point Free's GitHub, Point Free CO's GitHub. It's SwiftUI -install without the whole TCA. So that kind of thing. What I like, and this is kind of rehashing some of the stuff we talked about last time. So
sure.
But I've been enjoying it. So I will let you know how it works out with the actual tutorial. Real code.
And you're intending. You and I have talked about this before. You have some intention to build a project, like a side project, to sort of explore, or at least to learn how to do TCA in practice.
Yes. So after the tutorial, I think my next thing is I have this little side project idea
Mm-hmm.
that I want to try, and I figured I'll give it a shot with TCA.
Okay.
And maybe we'll see how that works out, because it's going to be not nested app.
Mm-hmm.
It's just mostly just for me, but I'm going to try to make it so that I can put it in the App Store.
Yep.
We'll see if I get that far. And then, so I'll talk about it when I have something to actually talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
I just been doing I did some research, took some notes, looked at, options that are out there and names and stuff a little bit, but mostly just like whether there might be, besides me, there might be like a couple people in the world.
Do you feel comfortable at least giving a broad context of the idea, or?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, it's really simple. I have a specific problem in quotes, where I go out to see a lot of music acts, and I often take some pictures of them, and I often want to like write notes about them and remember it later. Often I my other podcast, like sometimes later. And anyway, I wanted
what is the name of this other podcast?
Oh, it's called JAGcast. It's the podcast of the Jenkintown Arts Garage.
Okay.
You can find us if you look up Garage on YouTube, podcast player, or whatever.
Gotta make sure we get that out there.
Yeah, I don't usually cross plug the things, but yeah. So, and the problem I have is I wanted to create like a database for myself of these bands that I see, and the photos. Like there's photos that'll show up like from my photo album on my phone, like the little widget photo will show up, and that's cool. Basically, I just want to collect some stuff. There is a concept in paper form called a concert journal, which has been around forever, and you write down basically stuff like who's the band, what's the venue, what did I think about, what's kind of rating did I give it, or what my favorite set or my favorite song, or you can have all kinds of stuff in there. Some people put down in their templates like what emotions it gave them, or what things happened you'd want to remember, or just like notes about the experience. Some people make these elaborate scrapbooks, whatever. And for me, I mostly want to be able to capture some notes, basic information like the venue, and use the tools of the phone to make this easier. So like the venue can be kind of automatically suggested because of where I am, and the bands, once I've added one band, it can go into the master list of bands, so that I don't have to keep typing things the next time. And then you can start getting statistics that I want to know about, like how many times have I seen this band. Sometimes I'll see a band a year at something. I'm like, I feel like I've seen them, but I can't remember because I have a terrible memory for names, especially, and faces. And all these little things for a while, I've been like, I wish I just could like look up on my phone, like, have I seen before? Like maybe, and then eventually have like kind of a database of useful information about these bands, including their, their contact information and their social media, all that kind of stuff that you could see how once you create the little nugget of information about you saw this band in this place at this time, you can start attaching all kinds of other data, and then you can get metadata about it that you might want to know about, like how many miles, just interesting, how many miles have I driven to do shows in a year, or like how many times have I seen this, how often have I been there, and you can do all kinds of stuff with it. I see a lot of room for it to, if it's useful to me, a lot of places where I could expand its utility. So basically I'm trying to make a concert journal app. I didn't actually find any that I really like. I was looking, so I may not be any market for it. There's definitely a market for paper stuff.
I guess, I mean, you could call it like Groupie or something.
I think that was one of the names I was considering. We'll see what happens.
Was it Bandcamp or Bandcamp? What was I was thinking Scrapbook, or like Band. What's like a fan of like a local band, like indie.
I was trying to figure that out. In fact,
Indie Scribe or indie.
I tried to ask ChatGPT too. I was like, "What is that? What is a word for the?" I was like, "Is it a fan? Is it a per se?" Groupies usually something slightly.
I'm curious, like if any of the more higher level chat, or the ones that are more up to date. These, what do you call these? What would you call these? LLMs.
Yeah.
If any of them would know your band, right, or know.
Oh, whether in their training data. I don't know. That's a good question. I should check that out. One of these, because I usually see I see like small local people, not big name bands.
It would be interesting. You type the name of the band, right, and then in the background you pass that to ChatGPT or whatever to fill in the metadata.
Oh yeah,
and then you can say, maybe you'll do cross references, maybe you'll do pull up photos from Google or whatever, and then save them as like scrapbook material, right?
I mean, maybe. I mean, these are all. This is what I'm saying. It's like because it's just essentially like a journal. You could do this with like the note app technically, right? I just
Sure.
want it to be more automated and structured. You could do
Right.
it like Notion or like anything. You could do it with like an Excel spreadsheet, but I want something that takes advantage of where I am when I need this, which is I have my phone on me in a location, and I want it to be quick and easy to do. So my ideas also was kind of inspired for this particular idea, but like maybe some of the UI ideas I was thinking about. There's this little demo app that Hudson did with Hacking with Swift. What's his first name?
Paul Hudson.
Paul Hudson. He did a little thing a while back when he was showing off Swift UI changes, iOS 17. Really cool video, by the way, where he did this, where he has like a little app about his trip to Japan. And it has like these little things like food he saw, places he was at, these cards. And I was like, I was kind of thinking along those lines of having it to be kind of this easy, like card-based, colorful thing. And then, but it's ultimately, I mean, a pretty straightforward idea that you have probably a Swift data models that you're persisting. And it can start out with just really simple forms where I just type in some stuff, and I want to use like GPS to help me get the location, like Fantastical does or something, at least,
Right.
you know, where you in the name and it'll look it up and get you the address.
Can you extract the metadata from your photos? So if you open up something in the photo app and then bring it,
yes,
like,
sure you
bring it into your app, assuming that it gives you the permission to like pull out the metadata, so you could pull out the location of when you.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. Where you took that picture.
See, again, this is why I'm like, I wanted this stuff. This is a great idea. That's a good one. I want to take advantage of having like pocket computer. But yeah, you can. I know you can, because I've seen photos that give me some of the metadata, and obviously, like the Photos app itself has access to the metadata, so it's in there somewhere.
Sure.
I don't think it's like in format.
I mean, the nice thing is that you can save it, and then if you have band members, save the ones that you liked, the photos that you've said, okay, this is the one I want to give to the group. Package it. You have an isolated place to package it and then send it to.
That's another use. I mean, I was thinking at first it's mostly just like a record keeping app, but as you start thinking about it, and I took a bunch of notes when I was working through this thought process in an app called Bike. By the way, it's a good outliner app. But I took a bunch of notes, and so I started getting like a list of data items I might want and like features I might want eventually. There's so for a side project, if I actually use this thing, and I think I will, because I go out and I do this all the time. There's a lot of room, a lot of potential for growth and experimentation and it's a good side project idea, because it's something that I think I actually will use, because I already have this problem where I try to take some notes sometimes and remember it later, and then find the picture I took of them, and so that I can make artwork when I have them on my podcast and that kind of thing.
Sure.
And I already have that kind of problem this might help with. And then because it's broad enough that you can hook into all kinds of potential technologies that you want, so it could be like a long running side project. So this is future Steve coming in here for a second. The next segment, we're going to be talking about job stuff, and wherever we refer to Stack Overflow data, we actually meant Hacker News hiring trends, and the correct link is in the show notes. Management apologizes for the confusion. Enjoy. Again, it could be a good little portfolio app, because I need some anyway. Considering this job market, right? Good ready in advance, just in case.
I heard it's improving.
I don't know, man. I hear both. I hear both ways. I hear, like, you listen to the news or something, and depending on your source, you'll hear like the economy is booming, and then the next guy will say the economy is like next to depression. So you don't know. I don't know who to trust.
Well, I mean,
all I know is preparation is never a bad thing. So you want to prepare long in advance for any kind of job loss if possible. Not that I expect a job loss, but you never know.
I mean, I guess anecdotally, we've felt like the booms, like we've colleagues who've like gotten a job at Facebook during that boom period, now known as Meta, and all the other companies, and there's like, oh yeah, I'm getting some good money over here, and then like, whatever, then the bomb, then whatever dropped, like, we have to fire you guys,
Yep. So come to the Philly Coca Slack, and we talk about this sometimes. We give tips.
We do. We give tips. Actually.
Yeah, but like where to find where to find data. I was actually looking at the Stack Overflow list of data that was dropped in the Slack.
What was like the
it's not
prompt
Python.
engineering? Oh,
Oh,
Python.
kind of AI stuff, yeah.
Oh, that makes sense.
But
Hey, here you go, Aaron.
top language was Python.
You picked the wrong language, Aaron. You were on the right track in the first place. You
Yeah,
should have
yeah.
stuck with
Actually,
your data science.
Swift. I looked at Swift, and according to Stack Overflow, it was like 0. It was like up there, and then it dropped to like nothing. It's not even like the top 20, I think. But
Oh,
that's
really?
Stack Overflow has always had a bit of a bias towards certain languages than others. I don't know.
Oh, well, so like JavaScript's still number one, or is
No,
it Java?
Python was number 1 in this latest report, but
Python, and
probably
then
because of the AI stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense.
A lot of AI tools, machine learning. So Stack Overflow is maybe not as accurate as who knows anymore, but it's one useful data point, and you can explore their database of info in there easily, and you can like do comparisons and build little graphs that show like, well, where does like Java compare to .NET, to Swift, or whatever you want to put in. So it's pretty cool.
Where is .NET in that list?
I mean, it also is pretty low, but like also it depends where you are. Like in the Philadelphia area, .NET is big. Java and .NET are big. Like big. If you want a job, if you know .NET, that's why I was like, if I have a need to build a back end, I might just build it in .NET and that stuff, so I get up to speed on that, just because it's lucrative. I mean, it's a
technically Java, but I've heard it has an interesting uptick on the back end.
Yeah, Kotlin. It's tough. I haven't gotten to use it. We're using it for Android development, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Back end, I'm not sure. I don't think I know anybody using it for back end stuff, but you definitely can. Depends, I guess, on what frameworks you're using and how well they work with Kotlin, because some of them work better than others. But it's a conservative type of. It's still Java based. It's like outside of the mobile stuff.
Yeah.
Kotlin on the back end is probably still not as common as Java.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
but Kotlin's a much nicer language. So I think from a little I've exposure to it.
I'm surprised how similar it is to Swift in a lot of ways.
Yeah, but similar, different. The Android dev I know, and I talked about that a bit, and it's like similar and different enough that it's aggravating. You try to go back and forth, but he's enjoying it. He did like an app in Java right now, doing Kotlin a lot better, and just like. Now that my mind has switched over to the Swift way of thinking, I enjoy Swift. It's a lot more productive of a language for me once you grasp what it's doing or what you're supposed to do.
I think it's matured in a very nice way. So at this point, like majority of the very valid complaints back in the day are mostly handled. Obviously, other issues, particularly around, I believe, was the concurrency and distributed concurrencies. That might be a fair point.
I'm telling you, Swift 5.9 feels like Swift, like what they wanted Swift to be. It's like almost everything you'd wanted in Swift. I remember for years complaining about the lack of async await, because that was in .NET forever, and I was used to that. Like the concurrence was so painful. It was just basically taking the the stuff we already had, and then they did combine, which I never really used combine that much, but that was better. But also, its own kind of pain. And
I mean, there's a lot of things about like when you would use, like how you set up the cancellables, why you would use cancellables, how you'd set up, how you would use reduce, how do you just bug it,
Exactly. So now they have a story, which for I think most types of work you're going to be using, you can use the structured concurrency stuff, and async await, and then throw exceptions, and it just makes your code more straightforward. You just write it like it's linear code. It's just it's just you don't have to have the weird callback closures everywhere. It was just nested
closures.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like trying to find which brace you're missing.
Come on, Aaron. You must have some like really annoyance about async. Oh, dispatch main.
Dispatch main. I did that a lot. Dispatch main.
I got to clean that code up.
Now it's task main actor.
Oh well, yeah, that's everywhere. That actually shows up in
or main actor annotation everywhere.
Here, yeah, main actor like flag.
Yeah,
like,
you know what?
Everywhere.
I know we're way off. We haven't even got to our main topic, but I actually try not to use main actor unless I have to, because I kind of want things to be because the system's going to automatically throw things on threads. So it's like if I don't have to be, if I'm not touching UI, like there's no reason generally for it to be on main actor. But you do got to be careful, because sometimes you're going to have subtle bugs and not realize you should have been on main actor. So maybe that's why people do it. I've seen advice where they're like, if it's like observable, maybe, or if it's a model object, just put it on main actor. Like, Really? I don't know. Maybe. Sometimes. Basically, if it's UI based, obviously, but if not, I try to scope it down to like only the things that are there that should be definitely on main actor, because I don't want a bunch of stuff happening, because that can have its own performance problems if it doesn't need to be happening.
I remember like by default now, I don't know if it happened in this version or the version before, they moved all the view controllers to the main actor. It's like by default, you don't need to add. Used to you have to like add an main actor above that class, but now it's on by default.
On what? On view controllers?
On view controllers in UI kit.
UI kit. Oh, really? I haven't like done a new UI kit screen. Like file.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm bringing back.
And when I did last time I did UI kit, it was an Objective C, so we didn't have any of that main actor stuff.
Ooh, look at you.
No, I still go back to
now we're dating ourselves.
No, I go back. I mean, I've had the interface between Swift, Objective C, Swift UI kit, back and forth. It's not fun. Don't try to avoid it if you can.
Yes.
Causes its own bugs.
I think will be interesting for you with this side project. Getting back to your side project point of using ways. One of the things I always find about these sort of like apps in general, like particularly ones that are on your phone, is like it's fine if you're doing like one click, take a picture, save it, or store it or whatever. But it's involved, and it's a very involved thing especially when you're dealing with metadata. It's really kind of like it's kind of like the feel of the app kind of changes. And sometimes I try in my mind to like figure out how do I remove the amount of typing, or like remove those typing moments of like, oh crap, I have to type Apple, or I have to type some kind of word into like either the item or something. And so like the idea of using maybe, or even communicating with ChatGPT on the back to like pull out the metadata for you, or the relevant data for you more, I thought was kind of an interesting idea. I think I kind of played with the idea a little bit when I had in Fave 10, you typed in like your favorite ramen, right? But I always hate this idea. It's like, oh, now I have to go have the user dig into their library to find a picture of a ramen that they might have taken, and they have to do a little search and all that stuff. And I wanted to proactively give them, and maybe they didn't have a picture of a ramen. Maybe they just use my, cons, but that's no fun. So I think I remember using like I would pre-fill the ramen title into Unsplash, which is like it's kind of a service you can use for free up to a certain extent.
Like images, right?
For images. So it's the free images that you can download.
And they're quite good, a lot of them.
Yeah, usually quite good, and thousands and thousands of pictures. Totally free as long as you're a true author or the photographer.
And which, you can just automate into your app when you use it to put it in there.
Yep, which I do. So and then you can pick a photo and then download the photo. And in theory, maybe you can even do a little bit of like object detection, or maybe you can even inspect the photo more. So maybe you can identify more details about that photo. What you would want to do with that, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just saying as an opportunity to sort of start using models, a variety of different types of models to do different types of things, right?
Yeah,
to sort of help reduce the amount of manual work that the user would normally have to do on their own, entering the data.
It's almost like you're segueing to our topic of AI workflows.
Just trying to sneak it through.
Beautiful.
Man. I'm just trying to scan.
You're right. So I would like to explore using some quote unquote AI models in some app stuff. I think that's not going to be the thing I'm going to do for the first build of this that I actually try to use in the field, because that would be first get the core stuff in. But yeah, I think that's a great idea going forward. And there's a lot of ways I think we can, that I know that people use these new tools in their workflows in different ways. So you wanted to talk about this a bit today. So Kotaro, do you have a workflow in mind? Are you using some of these tools regularly now that they've been out for a while?
I feel like I don't know, Aaron. I feel like I'm like super vanilla. Like I try to do some basic like
vanilla AI.
Well, vanilla like prompting, right? Like I go, hey, ChatGPT.
It's pronounced prompting.
And my prompting is I was like, I was like, hey, you're a sexy Swift developer. I actually did say that.
Maybe I tell a prompting.
For a sexy Swift UI developer. So I try to like ask it like, oh, because I was getting into trying to figure out how to do shaders, but
This is
more in the
ChatGPT you're using?
yeah, and well, I was actually using ChatGPT. Then I realized, well, if the data model is too, it only goes up to a certain extent, I rely on it to know, for example, certain modern metal shader techniques. I sort of tried BART, and I probably should have tried Bing, which probably has
Maybe.
the data set's a little more, the model is a
Bing
little
Bing
better.
basically seems to search for stuff
Hmm.
and then use the LLM to generate your results.
Hmm.
So like it, and I mean, I guess that's how ChatGPT works too. Maybe it's just, but its claim to fame originally was that it actually incorporated search results, like
Hmm.
actual current search results.
Right.
So yeah, I've used it. I've used the Bing a little bit to like generate ideas, like talk, to be like explore something like that. Basically, what it does is it's like a faster way of looking up Stack Overflow answers because
Yeah. Yeah.
obviously it was like trained on them or trained it. Or with Bing's case, it's like what it's actually like is it's a faster way for you to search for a blog entry or Stack Overflow or something, Stack Overflow question that has code snippets you might be interested in seeing, and then it gets processed into a reply. So you get like this kind of you can get like this code chunk that's kind of an amalgamation sort of sometimes, or it's like, but it tells you where it got it from though. So what's funny is you go and you look at the blog post or something, it's literally just the same code. It's more convenient. That's what I'm looking for. It's much more
Yeah.
convenient than regular searching and checking like 4 different blog posts. It just kind of grabs them all together, which is a useful thing. That's what LLMs are good at doing. That's what the tool is all about.
I mean, it feels like it creates like mutated versions of the
Yeah,
code.
yeah. I mean, you cannot trust it.
Yeah.
But you get like the gist, like like
Yeah.
okay,
I
it's
mean,
for simple stuff. You can get a good gist from it.
it did go back and say, hey, you could use, not, it didn't say that, but it gave for image filter or CI filter
Yeah,
example when I was asking for a metal example.
yeah. It's
And I
because there's
thought,
probably
oh,
a
okay.
bunch more of that on the internet in its training set.
Yeah. Right.
So
So, on some level, it at least pointed me at an option of like an
yeah, yeah,
idea that I didn't consider because I thought to consider sort of post-processing effects on an image, right? Maybe adding like a scan line, maybe manipulating, maybe like warping the image in some form or fashion, or grayscaling it, whatever.
matrix
I could
effect.
use, right, the matrix or something.
This is where 99 again.
I don't need metal shader or anything like that. I could just use core image CI filters and do it that way somewhat. But you know, I can now use in iOS 17. I can now use modifiers kind of like a color effect, visual effect, distortion effect, and that there's one other layer. All allow you to use a snippet of metal code that you kind of is relatively easy to implement in terms of like a bite-sized set of code, or creates either, you can say, is usually it's like a simple function that's like grayscale, wave, something like that, and then there's like a complicated condensed math algorithm that it runs it through, and then reproduces the view that you apply these effect modifiers onto. And so I was trying to look for a solution there, but I can never. The model itself is up to date to the latest, say like June or July even.
But did you have success though in getting in this kind of thing to work? You're still
Yeah, like I said, I guess in the beginning was like, I'm not, I'm such a, I'm such a noob, I guess, for lack of a better
yeah.
word, at it. I don't know how to properly prompt,
Proomped. I like
prompt,
proomped.
yeah, prompt this thing.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
Aaron,
Well,
you can help me out here, but I don't know if you have been using it that much.
No, not really.
I'm
behind the times.
I
3 guys talking about AI tools we don't use. This is going to be a great
I
episode.
I mean, I think we try, but I don't know if like I don't ever really push it to the edge, right? I don't
No,
like,
we're not AI bros. So,
no.
well,
Well,
also we have to be careful. You guys probably can't even use it necessarily for your work, or can you?
we,
It's like there might be policies about it. I'm not sure what the policy is where I work, but I don't directly
so
incorporate any stuff like directly from a
I mean, if
AI
it's
tool.
something like a production level job
Yeah.
program, and especially if it's something where it's like we copied and pasted
Yeah.
and we didn't really vet it right properly,
Well, that
then
would be
yeah,
a problem.
I
Yeah.
think that would
I
be a
mean, I think the problem is like something like Copilot is probably what I'm thinking of more like where
yeah,
it's like integrated into your IDE and it's writing
mhm,
code that you may or may not
yeah,
be like if you're copying pasted code from it and then modifying it, that's literally what you were doing before with like Stack Overflow or something for
I
little things. It
right,
that I think you could you write tests around it, you validate it or something.
mhm,
I mean that's normal programmer behavior. I think what the issue can be with companies that need to be careful about this is that you do not want these automated tools necessarily insert code that you don't know anything about. Could be a violation of some license. Could just be bad code, as we've seen before with a demo that friend of the show Zorn did before. I think he was
mhm,
talking about how sometimes they can just give you bad results. I've seen lots of examples of like bad algorithms that come out of these things, even if the code works. So I mean, you just got to be careful with it. I think the companies are still figuring out how these tools work, and some are more
right. I
conservative than
think
others.
if anything, you need a relatively good base knowledge of the thing you're
So,
trying to understand,
so,
right?
so you who does not have base knowledge in metal shaders is asking the AI tools to tell you what's up
This
with them.
this is a do as I say, not as I
Yes,
do.
exactly. So, as I said, I have used it a little bit to help with stuff. I've used it mostly for non-programmer stuff, and that I found it useful for summarizing things. That's like a big thing. Or like summarize this web page. And speaking of I was talking before the show started. I was saying I was using the Arc browser, right? The Arc browser, which is like that TCA based browser, I think. Anyway, they have some AI called Max they just came out with, and here, I'll show you guys. You won't be able to see this listening because we don't do this as a video show yet, but this is their Max thing. And so they added some integrations in here, and the ones that are the best one I think is Ask on a Page one. I use that one where you go like Command F to search, and you can just do a regular search, but you can then ask a question about the page, and then it'll read the page and summarize it, and then try to point you to the exact section, and then highlight the section you can see in the little image in the page
Mhm.
of like where it got that answer from. I found it for technical articles moderately useful, I would say, because every time I've used it so far, the article has been too long. I think they put either always had this limitation, or when the time I started using, they put some limit on it where it'll be like, oh, the article's too long. I'm only going to read 25% of it. Or I'm going to read 50% of it, or whatever. So that limits it a little bit if it can only get like 50% of the article. But the idea is really cool, and I have used that, and it's been successful. And I was like, how do I blah 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 in this long technical article? Give me this answer, and then it just points me to the section of the article that talks about it. So that's pretty cool.
I wonder how that does for like recipes.
You know what? That's probably a great use.
Show me,
I wonder.
get me to the ingredient section stat. Yeah.
Yeah. See, I'm not using Arc for this recording. Otherwise, I could show you in a tab. But I'm not. I'm using regular Chrome.
Right.
But it also has a 5-second previews where if you put your mouse over and press Shift over any link, I think they call it 5-second previews because it takes like 5 seconds to generate, and it gives you a like a little preview card of the summary of the site. That is neat and also terrifying if you have a website that relies on ads, because no one's gonna click your website. But this is essentially what like Bing does. I think like Bing will get you if you search for something, Bing will give you like a summary, so you don't necessarily have to cite, but it'll tell you what the site was. This is kind of like that, I guess, but it's you the human are picking one particular site to get a summary of.
Okay.
And then it has like integration into ChatGPT from its own little chat command bar, which it basically just opens up ChatGPT. If you're logged in, it'll open up the page and just makes it easier to send commands.
Got you.
And then the other little things it does automatically. These are like little things I could see Apple kind of doing. It'll automatically tidy up your tab titles when you put them, when you pin them. That's actually pretty cool. It makes them short and so you can see them. And then same thing with downloads. So it'll take some crazily named file and it'll just rename it to something useful, so you understand what it is later.
What it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So like a couple of these are just really simple. They're probably not simple to implement, but they're straightforward and they're kind of like make your life a little nicer. One of them is just a faster way of getting to ChatGPT. And then the other two are like summarization tools, which I actually think are pretty useful. It's of how you can integrate this stuff into a product and it can actually be useful in your existing workflow. I like it. I like it. I haven't played with it too much, but I like that it's in there. It's baked in, so I don't have to like jump to a separate site or copy and paste URLs or something.
I mean, I do like AI that's sort of very subtle in the background. So they do a task and they do one well, or at least they try to do one thing really well, right? So like in some cases if you go to the Photos app on the iPhone and you start doing a search for food, it'll bring up every food that it's every photo that has food in it, or dog or something like that. Like it knows, because it's looked at you ahead of time and indexed them, where they managed to categorize all your different types of objects in the images. I don't know how it indexes it so thoroughly, but it's certainly like using AI to sort of figure that out. Or like it's the IX detection, which is better. It's still a little bit goofy from time to time, but better in terms of like auto completion. And I feel like there was something else that I was forgetting that they do in the background. But I don't want like an app that's like overtly trying to say, "Hey, look at me, I do AI." I'm still one idea, which was to do the in-betweens in animation. So you have like two poses, and I want to animate between those two poses or three poses. Not that I want to necessarily replace in-betweeners, but I want to make it so it's a little easier for them to generate the initial in-between and then them cleaning it up. So they
like an animation assistant.
Yeah. Just does the early, just does enough, and then maybe you can like clean it up if you want to.
So the image generation tools I've used a little bit. I used the one that was built into Canva. If you know what Canva is, yeah, that's like an online image editor. I used that to help me generate thumbnails once for something. I actually did so many attempts that it blocked me for the day and said you've tried too many times. Pick one of these several dozen images that were all terrible for the most part, but like that kind of thing. And if you've seen the demos of the new Photoshop or like stuff they have with the being able to like remove, Firefly is one of them. That'll generate images based on text. But they have, let me see if I can find it. They have a Photoshop. What do they call the feature? They have a AI editing now. What are they calling this? Oh, you can describe stuff to generate it, but you can change the background. You can remove and replace content. It's amazing. Like edit out elements quickly. That's something that I've tried, masking stuff. So one of that I do a lot when I edit photos. I think this might be some of the stuff. I'm going to share this. One of the, I think is, it's still in the wrong one. I think one of the things I do a lot when I'm editing photos is I need to mask stuff sometimes. I've been playing around with that. The new Lightroom tool on iOS has a feature to create, which is really neat, and I just tried that. So you take a regular like iPhone photo, not a I guess if you do a 15, they're all. I'm taking I took like a pro raw, like a raw photo, not and then it uses some model to try to detect the subjects and stuff, and then allow you to blur the background. And I've tested, been cool. And the really cool thing I've used is the ability to just mask stuff automatically. I use that a lot on some photos recently where I needed to mask, like I want you to select the background or select the sky or select the subject, and then like apply some stuff just to the subject. And it does such a good job where before you'd have to use your mouse and very carefully trace around something, or if you had like a pen or something, you could do it. Super tedious. One click. And it's very reliable at masking, and then you can apply stuff to that mask. And now they have this option in Photoshop, I believe, that you can like remove things from the scene. That's something I've done occasionally. Like you want to remove something, and it's really really hard to do right.
Sure.
And if this tool that they have works reliably, it will save me tons of time and clean up some photos without having some weird artifacts in it. Like, I hope it works because, like, the selection refinement, all that kind of stuff, these are, I guess, technically, quote-unquote, AI applications. I think they're generated, they're machine learning models, I believe, that they used. These not homegrown algorithms. I think, right? And so this is the kind of thing that I find exciting about this, not the, like the having fake conversations with yourself via an LLM. I don't care about that stuff. I'm not on the AGI train, but
for the people who know, what is AGI train?
Artificial what I mean is like I don't believe that ChatGPT is an artificially general intelligence, an artificial general intelligence, like a human level intelligence.
Basically the singularity.
Exactly. Like, no, I don't believe I'm not even sure that's actually possible to ever happen with tech, but that's a different interesting topic of discussion. Sure. But for sure, like, Bing is not actually, alive talking to you. It's you talking to yourself. But
are you sure?
Yes, I'm very sure. I'm very sure.
It didn't try to convince you to, but fall in love with it, and
yeah. But anyway, those types of the chat's cool, and I think it has a lot of utility, as we talked about earlier. But this kind of stuff with the image editing is where I think it's at, because this is an example of giving more amateur people like myself similar abilities in some circumstances to what a professional person would have, or it gives you the ability to do something much orders of magnitude more easily than before. So, like, I could have done this before. I could have painstakingly selected an object and tried to remove it from a video, from a photo or something, or I could have painstakingly masked out the sky so I could change the exposure. But usually I wouldn't do it because it's too much work.
Right.
But this makes it much easier to do that. And it doesn't replace anybody. It doesn't replace an expert. You still got to understand what you're doing. But it makes an expert able to be super productive, and it'll make somebody like me, who's more of an amateur about it, like, productive at all in this space. And I think this is like the bicycle for the mind thing from Steve Jobs. Like, computers and software should give you superpowers. They should help you do things faster, easier, or do things you couldn't do before. And that's where application of these tools I find are exciting. Being able to do that, not being able to search the web differently or something, but being able to like create differently. Look at this. Like, let's remove this horse. I think that's what they're going to do. They're going to try to remove the horse. Content.
That's exactly. Did you see what they do with like the Pixel 8?
I heard something about it.
One of the major features is like, it will allow you to take a photo, right? And let's say it's a group photo. And how, like, in a group photo, somebody's always got their head down or head to or looking the other way or something. You can, I think, I don't know if it does it in bursts or not. You can take that head, right? Like, modify it so that you can pick different. You can have it pick different, like, heads, so to speak, of like
different angles,
like from different angles. So like maybe it did a burst, like a burst shot, and like now it's like saying, okay, well, you can. This person had it maybe maybe like 20 bursts down, that they actually looked at you. You can like have it use that head versus
the other part of the picture, just replace the head, or
just replace the head.
Oh wow!
And
cool.
So like you can do things where like you now you can question whether or not anything is real.
Yeah, I mean,
versus like.
Well,
so
this
like
is where
all these like Instagrams. You thought the Instagram photos look
obnoxious. Oh God!
Now.
Have you seen the guy Instagram? Stuff is they're all over Instagram now. The AI generated people now. Oh yeah.
Really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, and but this is where it comes down to things like professional ethics and what's the context of photos used in. Like, if you're a newspaper, or like you're like a credentialed photographer for a news agency of some sort, like, you're probably not even allowed to do too many edits, if any, like, to photos. I don't know what the rules are, but you're probably not going to be allowed to like remove things from it, like, because it wouldn't because the context in which a photo is supposed to be used is news or informational, trying to be in a reflection of the actual reality. But in the types of photos that I do, like, I'm at a concert, I feel like it's more of an in-between area where it's obviously a real thing that happened, but I feel free to heavily edit the thing to change colors and color temperatures and contrast and all kinds of other stuff, so that it can look way cooler than it, in my opinion, than it probably looked in real life, or the colors are different than they were in real life. from your eye. But that's because I'm trying to create like iconic looking still images of an event to elicit like an emotional response, try to give you a sensation of kind of what it felt like to be there through the medium of still images. Right. Even though it was an experience of music and sound and light and movement. So like that's why I would do that, and I think that's fine. I mean, I'm not trying to do it for news. Now, if I was, I'm not trying to do like it's not trying to be like CNN or something about it.
I guess it's kind of interesting because it that touches on the sort of excuse me, the process of the art form itself, right? Because now I think when we talk about art, I think we've all had sort of that existential crisis of like, what is seeing a stable diffusion or a mid-journey, what is that going to do for my self-esteem, so to speak, or my desire to even create art if I know it could just be auto-generated, right? But the one thing I have always found missing from these art pieces, it's almost like it's almost the sense that it lacks a sense of process, or at least it feels like you can kind of you can look at it and go, okay, it's a great looking piece, and I'm sure it's got great composition, all the above. But I think sometimes I forget how much I really enjoyed sloppy, imperfect, art. And I think I always go back to comic books in a sense where, the artist doesn't have a lot of time. The penciler, in comic book world back in the good old days.
Before Aaron was born, and we were early old men.
No, but
little kid.
Aaron was reading some of these comic books, these little X-Men's, or he was probably reading Star Trek comics, but he was like, I don't even read comics.
I read manga before they were cool.
Aaron even know who Spider-Man is?
Yes, I do.
Oh God, Spider-Man. That was
all right. Let me think of it. Let me think of more. Moon Knight,
Gambit,
Rogue.
The '90s X-Men cartoon.
You can just shake. You can just shake your. It's okay. No, but comic book artists in the '90s and earlier, whatever. The process has always been style where you have maybe like a week to draw 19 to 22 pages of comic book art, and that's not even including the cover art if you were responsible for that.
Wow.
And then you had to pencil it, you had to ink it, you had to make sure there's word balloons, there's spaces for the ink letters to add their letters had to go in, and they had to manually letter that themselves. All the kabooms, all that stuff had to be manually penciled and inked itself, and then you had the colorists come and apply their shadings and their depending on like whether you're using new material or old material. It was a process, and that the turnaround had to be in 1 month, less than 4 weeks, because you had to make sure you had enough time to print, edit, clean up, whatever. So you kind of got this, because the turnaround was so quickly, like you had to sort of commit to doing it, but it was also very, you could always see errors. But that was sort of the beauty. Like you could see the progression of a comic book artist get better because he learned from that mistake. He didn't have time to like dwell on it. He just kept going. Yeah. And he
the same thing with the cartoons too. Like Batman animated series, famously, I think the opening the animation opened the show, Batman and the orchestral music and stuff. And there he's like on a rooftop. I think there's at least in the early episodes, there's like you can see dirt or something that was on the slide or whatever when they were filming it. I think they might have removed it eventually, just like you used to be able to see that on like imperfections in the film when you watch it at the theater. And you could see you could still see like weirdness with animations, because animation is done by lots of people and sometimes it's farmed out different groups. But you could see that like the primary art would change and evolve over time. Coloring might change a little bit, and
I know in anime they have like people who specialize in certain types of animation. Right. So you have somebody that specializes in like liquid explosion.
Yeah, well, it's hard. And I wonder, so you get today, there's a lot of bad, graphic art and like animated art. There's also a lot of good stuff. And I guess the tools, and whether they be AI tools or not, like the advancement of computing technology into these, I think it's been like a double-edged sword, where there's like more content now, probably in part because it is faster to produce if you can take some liberties and like copy and paste some stuff to be, imprecise about it, but like you can automate some of the production of this. I'm guessing, right? Like some of it, like if like there's animations. I'm thinking more of animation because that's more what I consume. But there's like animations of the bad CGI characters in it. But that's because you can direct the CGI scene, and you create the assets once, right? And then you can direct them in multiple episodes. You don't have to draw them all over and over again. You see a lot of those, like a lot of CGI mixed in with the animation. But on the other hand, you have stuff like what's that Demon Slayer anime that came out where I think it has some CGI in it, but it's done so well that I can't tell how they made it. It's just beautiful, and I wonder if they could have gotten the crispness they got with some of their amazing animation sequences in that without computers, or maybe it would have been harder, or even it wouldn't have been economical. I don't know. I feel like we've had some of the best stuff I've ever seen and some truly terrible things, partially because of the technological advancement in the field, like the tooling change.
Right. I guess
which changes the economics and changes, the level of skill you need.
I think with animation, it's kind of funny because it's almost like it went from going from like hyper realistic, so we're talking like stories, Toy Stories, or any Pixar related movies.
Oh yeah,
it kind of reached to that peak, and then now modern animations, Disney, Pixar, whatever, try to get it that rough sort of in between of like being like almost an impressionist version of that. Like they do a lot of work to make it feel like it's not 3D.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, I mean, is that a taste changes the people they're making? I guess they're trying to do something different.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is a reaction to what is prior. That's typical of the art world in general. But I also found that it is kind of like in when we think about like anime, for example, there's always the intention to be able to do that, like do what is hard to do in 3D, meaning like when you talk about anime, a lot of times what separates anime from like regular animation is they take tremendous risks with the camera angle, and they do these absurd transitions, and they do like weird distortions that you just can't accomplish with 3D. Like you would have to work really extra hard because 3D is so precise. So like to like morph the face in weird and like obscure and like mushiness, and then like then transition to like something like, and then like cut off some frames just to increase the speed and have a smear in there in between that. And then
they do all that on computers now, or is there still part of the process on paper, or is it?
Yeah, it's pretty much all on computers. I think that's the other funny thing too. Like you might look at a Miyazaki movie, and a good chunk of that is actually still hand drawn. In fact, I would say majority of that.
Is it hand drawn on paper or on a computer?
On paper. Okay. What they do is they scan it to a computer, so and all the post process, the coloring, that kind of stuff, is generally done like, so it used to be done on cells, and up to a point they still do it on cells, or they do something close to cells. But then when it switched to CG, it switch to the computer, scan it to the computer, and then refine it in post process.
And the last time we were talking about all these AI tools too, a while back, we were talking about, what was that
Corridor,
the Corridor crew video. They made I don't know if we talked about their follow-up one, but they made a follow-up which was even involved, like, and they further refined their techniques. And like you could just see these tools are getting better regardless. And the way I choose to look at it is, if you're an expert, like if you learn to use these tools, you're still going to be an expert compared to me. You're still going to be able to do more than I can. You're going to be more valuable. You constantly have to be providing more value with your skill set in order to stay competitive. I don't think like an amateur is going to be able to usurp you, but what the amateurs, with the less experienced people can get now is they get more ability than they maybe had before to reach a little bit higher. And I understand that could be threatening to some people, but I think overall it's good for the market.
The way I look at it is, one way I would be more inclined to say, okay, for a concept artist, for example, they might generate maybe like on average they pump out maybe 2 to 10 art pieces, concept arts a day, maybe. Now maybe they could just hand this off to somebody with a prompt engineer, and you say, okay, here are these characters, here are these scenes. I want you, Mr. Prompt Engineer, to generate scenarios based on based on what's on the script, I want you to take these characters and now put them in these scenarios and like give us some ideas, change the camera, give us some ideas that we can iterate over hundreds of those, and just and then when we can sift through them and see if there's anything that resonates. And then a good prompt engineer with a sense of style, a sense of context, a sense of understanding of what type of vision the director or whoever wants, can then go, okay, I'm going to take this and now I'm going to really like do some absurd ideas. We'll see what Midjourney or whatever, and then kind of play with that. I mean, these are the type of things you probably never see over in a production level thing. I mean, that's
so this is like ideas you're messing with. I can see that because, as I said, the tools I like are the tools that are helping me to accomplish something with my own work. But the problem we have, especially with the image generation stuff, is the like, where does it get the content from? Because it's like it had to be trained. The model had to be created by ingesting a lot of other people's people's work, and there's a lot of consequences of that I've not. I feel like they're being explored by people, but maybe you don't hear about all the time in the mainstream. Like, you do have to think about it, not just from a copyright issue or trademark use issue, those legal issues, but I always think about the larger, and I think we mentioned this last time we talked about it, like the larger scale. Like if you keep using these tools to make the products that you then put on the market that then get trained back into the models again, you're just like regurgitating the same stuff from like 2019. That like whenever the model was ended. So like when the first model came out and you started using it, it's like everything is just a derivation of that. I wonder if that's a good thing or not.
The sad thing that I wonder, I mean, the silliness in myself was like, well, a lot of people like in like the small business, like restaurant business, right? They always have a secret sauce or a secret spice or some kind of secret ingredient there, secret combination ingredient that keeps to themselves. They don't copyright it, they don't trademark it, whatever. They just keep it in like a vault somewhere or whatever, and they never reveal it, right? Like I almost feel like at this point, like artists are probably destined to do something similar, where they might take the highest res version of it, reduce it to the required client amount, flatten it to make sure that it's flattened, watermark the crap out of it, whether it be through like behind the
make it harder
or whatever,
make it harder to be used for training. And then
well, be fine with training, right? Once it's out there, it's out there. But the point is, they don't have the original.
Right. Well, I mean, then that's where the blockchain bros come in. They're like, well, you can use our blockchain original, but I mean,
I don't mean like even Adobe had, suggested a similar concept. Although I do agree that I think they were along the same point of view about blockchain. I don't care about that.
Yeah, I don't care about either. But photographers for a long time, they do this. I mean, when I take photos, I keep the raw file, which is the original file, and I have a Lightroom catalog of all the edits to it.
Right.
I do tend to give people two versions of my photos, like a version that's intentionally sized for social media, and then the full res exports of them with no watermark on those, but watermark on the ones for social media. Because the idea is that if they want to make like an advertisement or something, if I give them that access, they want to do something with it, or they want to print it, then they can use the one that one. And if they want to post on social media, watermark it, it's lower res, and stuff. And I mean, that's a common thing. Like watermarks on stuff or on photography are common. Like that's all over the place. So maybe other forms of artwork need to incorporate that in some way.
Yeah, some people just put like they put the actual one. I'm like, don't do that.
Don't the original, and especially like the original source file. Unless you're as part of like the contract or the deal you made with somebody, whatever. But don't just like put it out on the web.
Right.
Keep that secure somewhere.
Exactly.
But I do think that as we're only checking in with this only months after we first did a real long discussion about all these tools, they've already what we expected to happen. The big tech companies have released useful tools for mainstream people to use, even onto your phone, across the landscape, and people are now encountering them. People like myself, people who are less tech savvy than we are, even right, and they're going. And I think that at the moment, I'm still pretty cautiously optimistic that this is going to lead to some more creative stuff. Just like when like the iPhone first came out, when you first started having like cameras that were good on your phones, and people could start actually taking photos and videos, and they started creating things with those devices they couldn't before because they couldn't afford like the equipment. In this case, it's kind of like you can sort of level up your skills with the help of this machine. Like, it doesn't get you to an expert level, but you can now do things you used to not be able to do at all. Like, I'm telling you, like these Photoshop things, the content-aware fill, the demos I've seen are quite amazing.
I think one thing that I be interesting to utilize is figure out like how create, for example, a game that has a dynamic world where, I mean, they've sort of experimented with it, right? With some of these, like you're in a village, everybody is preloaded with everyone has preloaded with a preconceived idea. I'm sorry, every bot. Every MP set is preloaded with a preconceived idea in the days before and what's coming.
Oh, right, yeah. I think I've seen some videos about how that works.
Right, and so they're all sort of doing this dance with each other where they talk
doing
to
like
each other.
A script, but it's like,
right.
it has feedback between.
Right, and so then it starts creating a world, right? So imagine if you go as a role playing game, and maybe you have this world that is, it'll preset right to whatever the generic start of the game is, or wherever you're supposed to start in this village, but then you leave the village, right? You've done some horrible things in the village, or you've done whatever mischievous things, but the consequence of that is that it remembers, right? And so you go on your little adventure and you come back to the village, and now they're like, they know of the things that you've done in the village. And now
they know what you've done.
They got pitchforks and they're ready for you, right? Like they can react.
And,
and that's all like sort of like an AI, right? In a realist term.
And I think that I'm hoping that these kind of tools are not, like, some people think of them as very dystopian, right? And I think, what if you think about it this way? Like, you use a tool to do that kind of thing, that gives you a new kind of play, but it also, even like art generation, I know people are really upset, like some people are very vocal about the use of like AI generated art in that Nick Fury show, was on the MCU show, was Secret Invasion? Secret Invasion in the beginning. And it's like, that was pretty terrible looking art, but if you're using AI generated art for things, that doesn't mean it has to be all or nothing. Like, what if you use it for some parts that are tedious and time consuming and not that important? Like, you just need a procedurally generated forest or something, but then you do custom artwork for all the important stuff in there. So now you have freed up time for your artists to work on what's important and it's truly adding value to the game, and you're automating. It's like, the way I think of these things, they're not AI in the sense that they're not intelligence. They're like they're like auto-intelligence. I think I heard someone mention, I don't think this is my phrase. Someone else on YouTube said this, so I don't remember who. But it was like more like it's automation. It's the latest advancement in automation, and that's really cool.
Well, even something as simple as, let's say you make a game, those like Survivor, I forgot that name, Vampire Survivor, one of these games where it progressively gets hard. So it's a top-down shooter, and you're like shooting monsters that eventually get bigger and more complicated and larger, and they start to swarm you, and your job is just to survive. And then one of the things that might be interesting is like, maybe you can figure out a way so that the AI can take mutate some of it could be like a gene splicing game where like you're killing these other monsters, but then they sort of combine to form another monster, and then the monster
Super Conway's Game of Life.
Right, exactly, right.
I bet this probably exists somewhere. People have already done it. Like,
in terms of like, but then like you can make the AI learn each time, right? So like as you pass each round, the AI is like, all right, mother effer, I'm gonna throw this at you.
It's like the model. It's like these models are black boxes. Yeah, it's like they're kind of black boxes. Once you get them, like, you don't necessarily know the algorithm that you've created based on the training data and stuff, but once it exists, then it kind of works, and then you can give it feedback and you can see what happens. And that's the fun part about it. That's why everybody's experimenting. Everybody's making these models, and it's everywhere. And as I think we predicted, a lot of people predicted, not just us, a lot of people predicted it's going everywhere. Sure. And smaller models, as you said, Kotaro, like smaller models that work on device, work with less hardware, they're also going everywhere. Like, you'll see that's how you get the AI tools on your cell phone. It's not going to be, like GPT-4, on your phone.
We have M and A16s and chips that
next
have
year, man. Next
have
year,
that have
WWDC.
neural engines on them, right? With
Yeah,
like
and they
cores on these
I don't know.
things.
Apple just updated the neural engine on the latest chip. Like they took silicon and they dedicated to it. That's a big deal because I feel like the latest chipset is not really the performance improvement maybe people thought it was going to be in all ways. But what they did was they put a lot of that budget to the neural engine, right?
Yeah.
For the latest iPhone chips,
Sure.
which is a signal, and that I think next year, next year might be the finally like Apple unveiling all their AI stuff. They'll be like a year behind everybody else, but it's okay.
Is that when they're actually going to ship Vision Pro? It's like, all right, now we're ready.
Early 2024 is June now, I guess.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, I don't know, but I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be a cool this next 2024 is for Apple developers specifically. I think that's the year we're gonna start seeing more of the AI stuff. Like it's a little bit slower to get into our camp just because Apple had a lot of obvious things for. They have done stuff we used to talk about, but they haven't been done like the flashy things yet. Like, where's my Siri Copilot or Xcode?
Right. Well, at least now you can go to labs. Or at least we can.
Oh, right. We didn't even do the news
in New York.
We're so far over. This is going to kill me to edit, but we're so far over the time now. But we have to. We can't before we leave. We have to do just one little bit of last minute news. Mm-hmm. We are no longer invisible to Apple, those of us here on the East Coast. Apple, we're no longer part of flyover country, which is sad to call it flyover country. It's like, most of the country. But you know what I mean. Like, we no longer are ignored. You don't have to go all the way to California to get your chance to get hands-on with Vision OS. You can apply now and go to New York City or Australia. So
yes.
It was Sydney, right?
Sydney.
So... Yes,
cool.
You don't have to go to London, or I think it was London before. You had to either fly to London or go to California.
Tokyo, Singapore.
I don't understand why it took so long.
California and
the scuttlebutt, as it were, in Philly Coco, wasn't it? Was that someone was saying that there was enough slots open in California that people were just like going over there, like it wasn't hard to get a slot in California. Like I saw some other media report about it wasn't as popular as maybe expectations were originally.
I mean, it's tough
know
because
true,
like one thing that I realized about this product is like unless you have a legitimately interesting concept, like you could probably just get away with just having your iPad app compatible app to.
Yeah, I mean that's what we talked about with our Visions experiments, which we haven't forgotten. It's just that there's not much to.
But I think
with that beta until recently.
It would take a very forward thinking in the sense that they're more like all in on the idea of like a Vision OS app, or you have something very specific around Vision OS, or you already have a VR game, and if you do, you're almost silly not to.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. The Meta just came out with their latest Quest. Was a Quest 3 with an AR mode, which is actually pretty good. I saw a demo. It's not as good as Vision OS from what people who've used both say. Not even close. But people. Okay, I know we're over. We can't not talk about this though. Like people took those things on and walked around in real life, just like we said people would do. They did it. The Quest 3. There's videos. People walk around with these goofy headsets on in AR mode in real life with like people around and everything. And it's
so he could actually record his stream, right? Like he could record what he was seeing, right?
Well, yeah,
like,
I mean that's how we got the video. I think somebody did this.
That part kind of frightens me. Not because it's like now, like you said, it'll be a version of Glasshole. Like, is there an indicator that?
Oh my god, that was actually the headline. It was like, what do they call it? Like, I don't know, something holes. Like someone coined a glass hole.
Meta hole or
something.
It was The Verge.
Quest holes. The Verge. Quest holes or something.
The Quest holes or
maybe not. That doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound right at all.
You said it, man.
I didn't mean to say it. I'm sorry. I take it back. It came out that it was like no.
Too late.
It's too late.
Or
leave it in there as I don't want to spend the time to bleep it because I don't have. I'm not using cool AI tools to edit this podcast yet, so it takes me too long.
You.
I know I got to do that.
Well, That's all we're gonna have today.
Yeah, let's wrap it up. But I hope you enjoyed
it.
That turned into a long but interesting discussion about AI topics.
Agreed.
So
Agreed. You can learn more about Philly Cocoa at phillycocoa.org. There you'll find links to our Slack group, meetup schedule, and contact info. If you're feeling generous, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever your podcast platform of choice is, and share us with all your developer friends. And one more thing. All right, we're back to jokes. Really bad programmer dad jokes that I got from Reddit.
They're the best.
And I'm sorry. I'm like running out of. I'm totally in like.
Just ask Bing for some more jokes next time.
I should have. That was actually a better idea. All right, because these jokes are bad. Coming from a C++ background, my first day as a Java release engineer went about as well as expected. The experience was jarring.
Oh my God.
Joke number 2. Where did Zuckerberg's threads fail? There was a deadlock between not having enough regular users and not having regular content.
Oh my God.
These are really bad. I didn't
Who
bet
wrote
these
that
really
one?
well.
Is that an AI joke?
Got executed create for 6 days. On the 7th day, he just called an API. It was his day of rest.
Oh my God.
And with that,
That is terrible.
Till next time, good luck on your own developer journey. We'll cheer for you always.
Any last words, Aaron, to put as a tagline here?
Oh my goodness.
No, I think this is a world record for least I had to say in an episode. So.
Well, now we could add that at the end.